Hello, I'm Nigel Slack, and this is Who is My Councillor? We're here as part of a series of interviews aiming to allow a glimpse of the people behind the role of city councillors. Today, we're joined by Councillor Terry Fox, who is leader of the council and the councillor for Manor and Castle Ward in the east of the city. Hello, Terry, and welcome.
Hi, Nigel, and thank you for having me today.
A pleasure. Okay, so first question is one that everybody will get. What made you get into politics in the first place, and why the Labour Party?
Well, I think you have to go back into kind of from the childhood I came from. I mean, I was a child that came through the care system within the city. I'm born and bred in Sheffield. I was orphaned. I lost my mum at 4 and lost my dad at 10. So I kind of came through the care system in some respects, but also was very fortunate that I got a family home when I came out of care that I went to. And a lot of my family were in the mines. And so it was a natural progression that when I left school, Newfield Comprehensive School, and you know, like many people, I were in and out of trouble. I'm no squeaky saint. I don't even pretend to be. But I went into the mines, and from there, really kind of learnt my trade. I like many a young person, I got put with an older colleague. Was brought up in the ways of keep your nose clean, make sure you attend, and you'll get looked after, etc., etc. And then the big bang hit me. McGregor came in, was attacking the steelworks, and also then came the 84-85 strike, which for a young fella just married, I married Denise, who is a councillor, as you know. We just had our first child and was just starting out, if you want, on our journey through life. Suddenly it bang, we went on strike. I kind of naturally assumed that it would be a short one. Nobody understood that it was going to last a year. And obviously the pressures and the way the strike rolled out, etc., that it became very clear that as part of the union, etc., I started to form opinions, started to get values, and obviously on that journey through that strike, you make decisions about the way forward. And after the strike, when we returned back to work, I returned a different person. There's no doubt about that. And within that, I kind of formed that I would go back into education. I was very fortunate that I took education through the union, did a bit of it at Polytechnic on politics, etc. And so became really kind of aware. And as I say, you know, we talk about social justice, and we'll probably get into that later on. But part all the way through that, the camaraderie and the way that the communities started working together to maintain and uphold. So a lot of my values was framed in that, and around helping people, about camaraderie and the way that we kind of progress through work as well, and the quality of work, quality of jobs, and quality of pay, and what that security that gives you going forward. So it had a major effect on my life. It kind of turned me into politics. And you said, why Labour? Well, anybody who does a little bit about that history through the strike could see that obviously we were battling a government, a Tory government, a Thatcher government at that time. And so the natural resting place at that moment in time, and bearing in mind I came through the union, was that I would naturally land as a Labour Party member, and that's what I became.
That's interesting, because my father was in the steel industry, and the words he uses for McGregor cannot be repeated in polite conversation. So yeah, I completely understand that direction of travel that you took. What made you first stand to be a councillor?
Well, here we go. As I kind of developed through, as I say, I got into education. I took quite a liking to a bit of personal development, really, as I kind of progressed through. And then we had our second child, our Jordan, and we kind of progressed through, and I kind of got an appetite to kind of educate myself a bit going forward. And part of that was not only kind of going through the union and the union scales and conferences at Blackpool, etc. And I kind of quite was surprised that people would want to listen to what I had to say, basically. Just as this little South Yorkshire lad stood on a lectern, probably couldn't see above the lectern at the time, and a lot less thinner, let me tell you, than what I have at the moment. But you know, suddenly people was kind of listening to some of the stuff that I had to say and the way that I was saying it. And that kind of rolled out to when then in our community there was a planning application, and there's a councillor on the council now. Peter Price was one of our local councillors, Alf Mead, God rest his soul, and John Webster. And there was an issue that was brewing in a local area, obviously affected a number of the community, and I kind of was at the branch meeting very explicit about what my thoughts were about that. And so then obviously, well, if you think that much and you really want to affect what's going on, why don't you put yourself forward as a and I never ever thought that. I'm bearing in mind working in the pits, 3-shift system, all of that sort of stuff. So I did, and I was very fortunate to be selected for, at that time was the Healy box. And I stood for election in 2002. I got elected, really. I always remember on election night, I'd got a phone in with a bit of a sick voice saying that I couldn't make that shift. And the reason why is I had to go to the Sound Hall to sign the book within the Sound Hall. And then obviously from that moment, then I had to kind of make way and take the route that we went on. So in that respect, it was kind of how I could affect a situation in the community, and then it was a community that I'd been around, that I knew around, and the local school that I went to was in that Newfield school. So it was just a natural fit in that, and then I kind of won the election, and that was start of my kind of journey through politics locally.
It's interesting. A lot of people seem to comment on local issues being the ones that kick them off into politics in the first place. But of course, you've had 20 years now as a councillor in Sheffield, and you are now leader of the council. How did that role come about?
Wow, is the answer. I don't really know. I'm looking back after 6 weeks of being in the pilot's chair and looking in that kind of mirror, thinking, well, how did I get here? So I'm sat in this big office. 20 years in politics is definitely a long time, and I never really thought I was going to be in here. So over the 10 years in austerity, we obviously the first part of my tenure was with the Labour government, and we were able to affect with decent homes, etc. A number of ways how we affected this city. The second part, if you want, was all about austerity and how we kind of roll back, and some of the issues. And I've been in the middle of some very controversial issues, and the trees, obviously, in Sheffield's been one, and I've got scars on my back for that, and I've got lessons learned for that. And I've on behalf of the party the local party made apologies to the people of Sheffield who were affected in that, and I'd reiterate that now, that I sincerely apologise for some of the issues that went off, some within my tenure, some I were only there for about 10 months, I think, but you really got to feel the passion and the real sincerity of that campaign, etc. And obviously, if you don't learn something through those, then you shouldn't be where you are. So as part of that, but also the other issue was I felt we were going in a different direction. I think it was about 2018, I think it was, when I kind of put up to believe that we should be going in a different direction. And in that, we have a process within in Labour Group where we feel that if you want to do that, we have an AGM and you're able to put names forward, etc. So I did put my name. I felt that we had to come out from under the blanket. That's my analogy. I thought the council had been under, and we needed to get it more out into the communities, etc. But I didn't win that vote. Didn't really, but I thought that if you feel that passion, you've got to get it out. When something's burning inside you, you've really got to. And so after that, I thought that boat had sailed. If I'm being brutally honest, that had gone. I was quite. And then within months, I was suddenly there was a position for deputy leader that came available. I put myself as deputy leader. I was asked to do that, to see as a bit of a unifying candidate, which I did, and loved that role, to be brutally honest with you. And I just saw myself as a career kind of deputy leader, and Vike, my predecessor Bob, who unfortunately lost at the last May election, and we was left rudderless really. We were all, Bob really never got time to affect excess of the way we were going, but in the role as deputy leader, I'd had a real opportunity to roll out the big city conversation, which obviously yourself was a big part of that. And I know we were just getting into that. I think really we were just getting our teeth into that, and really, I honestly believe getting into the meat of community engagement and having independent people like yourself and others getting really involved in that. And I really felt that we were going to get something back, which we did. But I thought there would have further mileage in it before we got the information that we got from that was really, really kind of useful. And I come to this analogy about coming out and no matter where we held these meetings or wherever we went to speak, people wanted us, Nigel, come out of the blanket and get out back into the communities. And that's when we started developing that local area committee. But just going back to your original question, did we see this coming? No, we didn't. We thought Bob was going to win his seat, hold his seat, and we've gone. So when that happened, I'm sure we might talk about that. We then faced the kind of really nightmare for politics on when you're looking at the first past the post system that we were entered into no overall control. And I think that the skills I'd learned, as I previously said, through union schools, through working in a big heavy industry, etc., and through the union, some negotiating skills that we needed going forward. And as I say, I was honoured and proud by my group to be elected leader and to lead those talks with our Green Party comrades.
It has been a very 2 weeks in politics, as they say, is a long time. Since May, it has been quite the turmoil really in City Council. I'm impressed that it's actually kept working to a certain extent. Because yes, council moved into no overall control. A working agreement had to be found to ensure that the administration could go forward. You end up in the leadership role, which you weren't particularly expecting. And of course, there's the result of the referendum and the current transition process that we're going through to a committee system. And then, of course, Bob had thrown in the local area committees as part of that as well. So your plate must be piled so high at the moment. I imagine you don't know which way you're moving sometimes.
Absolutely, Nigel. But I think if you've got a core belief of social justice, and people say, oh, he's thrown about that word, but if you've got a core belief of social justice, and that you really want to get that through, fairness, discrimination, the way that we kind of get an inclusive, and just as the last few weeks with various announcements, I've been adamant, I've not bowed on that. I really want an inclusive city that is acceptable of every individual, and that every individual has the right who they want to be. And I'm adamant on that. I've the reason why it worked when I worked in the pits and we worked with thousands of different characters was we were all treated the same, we were all paid the same, we all worked the same, and we all came out of the pit and got washed. It's a fundamental belief of mine that you should be who you want to be, and I don't walk in anybody else's shoes, Nigel. So if that's your fundamental belief, and it's my fundamental belief about diversity, about inclusion, etc. And I know they roll off tongues on that, but I really kind of believe in that, and I hope that the last 6 months has really shown that. So when we entered into these negotiations, I had one mindset that I wanted to change the way council worked. We'd just come through the referendum as well, so we'd got a referendum that we'd had a large voice of the public said they wanted us to work in a different way. So I had to set up committees as well in that. And probably another period, I know you've said we will talk about it. That's another major piece of work. But yes, and so we had a real opportunity, but at the back of my mind, we had to make decisions. What we couldn't allow in no overall control, a blockage that we couldn't get decisions over the line. And to be fair, you know, when we entered in those discussions with the Liberals and the Greens, right at the beginning, it was a really intense 2 weeks. And I was very, very fortunate that Julie Grocott, who I believe you've interviewed or will be coming on interviews after, who's my deputy leader, has been fantastic. That I cannot praise that my comrade enough on that. You know, the woman's been fantastic for me, and I cannot praise Julie enough on that. And we went into them negotiations, as I say, wanting to get decisions over the line, make sure that we could keep council working. We've just seen the levelling up fund that we went in for. So that was the mindset. We couldn't get a triangular agreement across the line. That became clear early on. And so then it seemed that we could get an agreement with the Green Party. And to be fair to Douglas Johnson, Alison Teal, when we entered into them, they were fantastic. We had some real kind of deep conversations, but to be fair, I think on all sides, I hope they would say the same, that we treat everybody with respect, everybody's views. You know, we came out with the cooperative agreement. There's some things on there I wouldn't have thought naturally would have sat in there, but they've sit in there. We've got them over the line. So we got 6 what I call planks that supports underneath the cooperative agreement, and we were able to get that fundamental agreement. We agreed then that we would bring them into what was then the cabinet, but we've now formed this cooperative executive, and you know, working well. I would hope that we don't see eye to eye on a number of things, and we've just kind of got through the clean air zone, which we've all had different views of how that would work, but we managed to get to a situation that we've got that in for the. And I've always said right from the beginning, this were never party politics with me. This were about putting Sheffield first, and it were always about that. Obviously, within Sheffield, the residents as well didn't want to see a Punch and Judy kind of act. You know, I took that they wanted meaningful conversation, which we did do, and we entered into that. We got it over the line. I think hours before the full council meeting was actually when we finally got it signed. There were a couple of times it could have fell, and we would possibly have had to make a decision when we went be a minority administration. But I didn't think that was the way that the people of Sheffield voted for. They voted for us to come together, if you want, and make some sort of decision. So we did that. We got that over the line. And to be fair, I think we're working well. We're getting decisions through. You know, if you look back over the last 6 months, what we've actually done, the rollout, as you say, of the local area committees, the transition committees are there working. We've got the corporate executive that's making executive. We've had full councils dealing with. So with the governance side, I don't think because we're working at pace, we are dropping the ball on a few things that I'd be the first to agree that. But I did say that from day one, we will drop the ball on this. This is new territory for not only us, but for the city and for active citizens within the city. You know, we won't get this right first time. And I think, as you said earlier about, you know, this software, we will be moving and changing. And where we start today, if you want, will not be where we finish. On this, but there's a real appetite that we get this over the line. And so my major aim here is to get now, we've got the budget to get through, we've got the HRA to get through, we've got the local plan to get through. So there's a number of bites on this, and we've got a governance policy to get through. So if I can finish off the year with that, I would say that, you know, and keep the relationship, I would say job done for the first year. I have
to admit, you know, like any big organisation. It's a bit like supertanker. It takes a long time to change direction, but it is clear that things are starting to have some traction in terms of moving the role of council and the engagement with the public. So that's all to the good as far as I'm concerned. Just to round this off, I suppose, you are still an individual, albeit as leader of the council. You are still an individual councillor. So what are your priorities for your ward of Manor Castle?
Well, I always say this, don't I? I mean, I've said it for a few years now, is gain dots from the Manor a voice. And I really mean that. I mean, my main aim has always been to give those people without a voice and a place at the table. And I hope that people honestly believe that I come from a community, I drink with my community, I eat with my community. So I'm able to influence on that. So we have got a unique ward in some respects, and I suppose every councillor you will talk to will say, well, I've got a unique ward, but we've got 15 registered social landlords in there. We've got private, we've got a development going on with housing. So we're delivering housing at pace, if you want, in the ward. But within the ward, I say we want a voice, but also through COVID, we saw a number of factors on here, and I'm one of the most deprived wards in the city. I'm a governor on the local secondary school, Park Academy. We see those issues, if you want, from siblings. We've got a real issue with antisocial behaviour, etc. So there's a number of issues that we've got to deal with on a day-to-day basis, but we are working together. I always say that I want to affect where people live, work and play. And I see that, getting a stable community is about having that and things. So when we talk about litter, we could do a survey now and probably across the city, litter, fly tipping, antisocial behaviour, it'd be in our top 5 wherever. We've got issues where we've got young people, we need to get them into work or into education. We need aspirations for those young people and how we kind of work with them to deliver that. It all comes under this kind of social justice, but in our community, we cry out that we have got some big aims that we want to deal with that. So we're bringing, as I say, we're bringing up the housing in there. We just regenerated for Park Hill. It's been a massive issue for us. We've got very limited public buildings, so where we can work with that. We've got a fantastic youth network. But one of the big issues that came out of COVID was the digital exclusion of not only our children, but also with adults as well. And so part of that, we are rolling out our own, in the community, our own digital strategy of how we get that collective working with the kids, bearing in mind we may have an household, how some families survive with probably both parents at home, 3 kids, 4 kids, how they kind of survived is really kind of a miracle in some respects of keeping education as well. So we've got that, and I can come out with a number of other initiatives that we really want to do. But as Terry Fox, as a person, what we want to do is kind of lift up that aspiration of the Manor Castle ward. We want to really delve down. I launched the poverty strategy with Councillor Mohammed about some of this stuff, and this is not about, in some ways, just continually throwing money at it. This is about changing hearts' mind as well, about how we kind of progress in there. So it's working with partners. We've got Manor Castle Trust, we've got the Hood Boxing Group, we've got the Scouts, we've got a number of local facilities, we've got the schools, a number of schools in the ward, we've got our kind of park. It's how we pull all of that. We've just set up some local football teams, there's the litter picker groups, etc. So we've got a number of partners, organisations, but it's pulling it together and also working how we facilitate. So I see my part on some of this is a bit of a facilitator role as well, but also using my role as not only as a local councillor, but as a leader as well to influence some of those services that we've got in there. We have a monthly meeting of the Manor Action Group, and that brings all the community together. We kept our NAG, the Neighbourhood Action Group, that kept the Part B, where a lot of our partners can share on a non-disclosure agreement the information around the piece, so how we can kind of really work with families and help them through some of their challenging circumstances. And of course, obviously this year I kind of lost our partner, Pat, which was a big blow for the ward and for the city. So we've had to deal with that as well. So part of all of this is about how we get a voice for the manor, how we kind of get a shout for what we want, people in work, people with aspirations in education, etc. So, and how we kind of deliver that with everything that we've got around our district centres, how we improve all of that. So as I say, my big issue is about how I affect where people live, work and play, and how we kind of enable them to engage and empower them to kind of really get in and change their community for the best. Okay. And also whilst being totally inclusive across the ward. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit passionate. No. I really believe in that.
I'm happy to let you go on forever, but I know that any second now your PA will be knocking at your door saying your next meeting's ready. Because I've been there. I've been the one who's actually pushing you over the edge. So just finally, you've given us some of the priorities for the city already. Is there a one sentence that you could give me that tells me Terry Fox's priority for Sheffield City?
My priority for this city is quite straightforward. And it's twofold. I know you say you want one, but it's twofold. One is to give it a voice on a local, regional, national, international stage. And I come to the view of how we make Brexit work, not how we get it done now. How does it work and how does it work for the city? But my simple view about all of this is I need to make tomorrow better than today. And that, all my kind of effort, all my kind of sinew goes to that. So when I'm working really, really long hours, and of course, you know, I've got a part-time job as well. So I've got, you know, and I am a granddad with everybody, every other duty that comes at us, Nigel. So if I can make tomorrow better than today for someone out there, I'll know that I'm on the right track.
Great point to close on, I think, Terry. Thank you very much for this chance to hear a little bit more about the role of a councillor and the person behind the role of a councillor. I hope you enjoyed the experience, and I hope you'll feel happy to encourage your colleagues to get involved as well, because this is something we want to do with as many councillors as possible. I think it's a really valuable initiative that the public can understand the people that they're voting for. Thanks finally to you for watching. If you want to know more about Who Is My Councillor, then if you go to our website, which is one word, whoismycouncillor.co.uk, you'll find us there. And goodbye.